Communities of learning represent a collaborative, supportive model and have the potential to raise achievement of all our students and teachers. They also need a considerable mind shift amongst all stakeholders to realise that change. If we have as a cornerstone to shifting thinking a focus on the values and beliefs of the community, the school and the people within it, then we place people at the heart of everything we do. So the school vision seems like a sensible place to start. And then if we see the formation of the community of learning as our burning platform, then we see it in terms of current opportunity or even anticipated opportunity, depending on where schools are on the journey. Cotter suggests that in our normal working life, there are rarely real crises or problems that lead to a sense of urgency, so we have to create it ourselves. There may be different motivations for forming COLs, but it's important that the reasons why are clearly understood if that sense of urgency to get everyone on board and embracing the changes that it will bring is to happen. One argument could be that if we continue as we are, even if we're currently successful schools individually, there'll be problems for our learners in the future. The danger of short-term gratification, the idea that we do what we need to do in our school, the kids reach their targets at our school and now we're passing them on to you, that happens in the current system doesn't really consider the long-term outcomes for students. Communities of learning should allow us the option to have a longer-term view, to build a pathway for learning for all children at the pace that suits them and not where they should fit at a given age. You could ask the question, what's holding us back? Why not move forwards? So who are the stakeholders? Who needs to know? And who needs to be involved in the process? I decided to look at the different stakeholders and consider some of these questions, the questions that they might ask, what the blockers and enablers might be, what possible channels of communication there were, and what the level of engagement different stakeholders might expect to have. So the big questions are the ones that BOTs and principals sort of grapple with to create that sense of urgency. People often associate important change with problems, but a problem doesn't have to be the trigger of a change. It needs to come from a desire, a resolve, and a determination to improve. But does improve mean doing the same thing better? Surely it's getting different outcomes that will have a greater or different impact on how kids learn, and therefore what they need to learn to be successful. And then there are the questions that other stakeholders might pose, which is where clear, succinct information and communication needs to be, and it has to be well prepared and thought out. So the link between belief and change that needs to happen has to be really clear, and space needs to be provided for consultation, for participation in discussions, for opportunities for stakeholders to challenge their own thinking and to come up with their own answers. I think at this point it's really important to keep coming back to the school vision, to ground what we're asking people to do in something which is contextual for them. Cognitive dissidence is is an interesting one. And what do people say they believe in, and what does their practice actually look like? It's important to challenge them to articulate their values and reflect on how their practice actually incorporates their values. Keegan and Leahy suggest that if we're to instigate major change and sustain it, we have to confront our own barriers, which come from prior experience or mindsets, and also the situation we're actually in. And they're often hidden, but they affect our assumptions about how things operate. So Keegan's immunity map provides a step-by-step process to identify what might be stopping you from achieving a goal and helps you to formulate a plan. And this can be used at an organisational level too. Coming from a positive perspective means that you identify and celebrate successes and people's strengths, and you can provide them with a space where they're listened to and where they have choice and where they can voice their opinions, ask questions, get answers. An environment where they're prepared to take risks, knowing that they're supported and encouraged. And we have to connect with the senses somehow, because part of our humanity is that we do that to build trust and respect by making connections with each other. And according to Jonathan Gottschall, sharing stories gives shape to our life. They appeal to our emotional centres, and stories are a great motivator for change. When communicating, it's important to select the best or most appropriate way for the message, and they should be unambiguous, succinct, and underpinned, again, by those values and beliefs of the members of the community. So informing people of what is happening may be appropriate in some situations, but it's important to consider the stakeholders and the level of participation that is appropriate for them. This spectrum of public participation offers a continuum of engagement. No one element is necessarily better than the other, and providing options across the spectrum can avoid conflict, resentment, and can improve understanding and ultimately acceptance and engagement to change. So here are some ways that you might be able to communicate. So in the inform level, and then consulting, getting people's voice, getting people's ideas, and then actually involving them and collaborating them and ultimately empowering them. In his book, The Innovator's Mindset, George Couros talks about the value that investing time in people has in terms of engagement and adoption of change. Interestingly, being ignored or not recognised overtly was more likely to lead to disengagement than people focusing on weaknesses. So I think it's really important that the relationships that we build with all members of our community are paramount. It's important to invest time in people to build those relationships, to listen to them, to notice them, to acknowledge their challenges and celebrate their strengths, and recognise that everyone is different and there are different ways to communicate to meet everybody's needs. Which means that it's a really communities of learning are a complex change, and so there's going to be very complex ways of having to deal with that. But I still think that actually relationships are the key thing here in terms of getting people to engage in that change.